I wanted to tell you about the time I moved to Nevada when I was 19. Spoiler alert, I only lived there for about a month, but I pretty much moved there, you could say, on a whim. Let me give you a little bit of backstory because I think you can play along a game called Red Flags, things I should have paid more attention to realize it was a bad job. But hey, that's no surprise when you're young and you really don't know better. When I was about 19 years old, I was living in a town called Casa Grande, Arizona, and I saw an ad in the newspaper for a job. And yes, back in those days, you looked in the newspaper for jobs. And it was for a job in Nevada. They offered, well, the job basically said they would offer free housing. But obviously I lived in Arizona. I called the phone number and they pretty much told me over the phone if I could get myself there, they would not pay for me to move there. But if I could get myself there, the job was mine. So that's probably red flag number one, that they were very desperate for people. So to just clarify, if you're familiar with Nevada, there are large parts of Nevada that's pretty much all desert and not really a city with businesses and homes. It's just kind of like middle of nowhere type places. And this job was in a middle of nowhere type place. So that is why they were offering free housing with the job, that I'd be in the middle of nowhere. The first thing I had to do was find a way to get there. I did have a car and I basically had to use all my money for gas to drive there. And I was living in a place, but I knew that where I lived, it was like a month-to-month rental. So I knew that as long as I gave notice, I could move out whenever I wanted to. So I ended up putting all my stuff at my family's house to store pretty much all my stuff. I didn't really own that much at age 19, but you know, anything like clothes, books, things, you know, things of very small value. And then I got my car and I drove to Nevada. And they basically said once I get there in town to give them a call and that someone would meet me. And so I drove. Back in those days, you pretty much had to use payphones. There was not cell phones. So I got up there. And of course, the drive there was quite interesting because I was driving through areas that probably aren't traveled much in Nevada. So then I got there, I called them, I said I'm in town, was there for the job. Someone came and met me and I started working there. So I started at this job and like I said, it was middle of nowhere. There's not like, you know, a local Walmart or anything like that if you want to go shopping. So for me, it was a big jump going from, well, I'm used to living in large cities. Casa Grande's not a large city, but I'm used to living in the desert, so the extreme heat didn't seem to bother me much. Although I'm not a big fan of living in extreme heat, I would say that I wasn't really happy with the job. But I mean, no surprise because I knew very little about the job going into it. I didn't really know what to expect when I got there. I'd never been there before, never got to meet the people before, and I guess I kind of went into the situation with, in my head, I had an out because I kept trying to tell them that within a month I was expected to be back home for someone's birthday. I mean, that is true, it was someone's birthday coming up, but I guess like in my head I just kept telling myself, well, I was gonna leave after a month anyways to go visit my family with the intention to come back. But eventually when I did leave, I told them I was leaving for this birthday and then I never came back. But at the time when I first told them about the whole birthday plans within a month, I don't know if that was somehow subconsciously, that was my out to get out of a bad situation, if it was a bad situation. You know, the job wasn't difficult. The living situations were a little weird. So there was a house that they had me living in and a lot of weird things kept happening in the house. And I was being told like, you know, it's an old house and that old houses, you know, can creak at night and make strange sounds. And I don't believe in ghosts or anything like that. But I was under the impression that maybe someone was trying to get into the house because I kept hearing noises like someone was trying to get in the house. They told me that there was some sort of like underground area under the house that I guess, who knows, maybe they used back in the old days of like prohibition and bootlegging and everything. But I'm not sure if there was like someone trying to get into the house from underneath, but there were times where light bulbs would be missing from the hallway. So it was like clear that someone had been in the house when I wasn't there and was messing with things. And so that made me feel very unsafe. So that's just the living situation, not the job situation. But there is something to consider that it was a very small town. So I learned that living in a very small town, obviously everybody knows everybody. And I don't know if this meant that because I was new in town, that meant me being, what's the word, like fresh meat. I was young and there were people that I don't know if they wanted to mess with me or what their issue was. But there was a man who was a customer of where I worked, and this person was very nice to me while I was at work. But then one day when I was off work, I went to the gas station to get gas, and he was there at the gas station, and then he just started yelling at me, and I didn't really know why he was yelling, so I just kind of stood there because I was thinking, like, what did I do? He just started saying, like, he was going to, words I probably can't say on this video, but he was going to hurt me in some way. And so I got scared. I told the gas station to please call the police because this man was saying things to me. They called the police on my behalf. I waited for police to come. It was clear there was no actual police nearby. This was a very small, remote area. And who knows, maybe there was only like one police officer for that whole city. I don't really know. I'm purposely not giving the name of the city because I don't want anyone to like misjudge the place, but it has been, a very long time. This is when I was 19 years old when all this happened. So basically I went back to where I work. I told my boss what happened. I had mentioned that it was the customer from work and that he was saying these things to me at the gas station. I told him I did not feel safe. The people at my work were just kind of like, don't worry about it. And then, I never really made the connection that the person that may have been coming into my home where I was living may have been the same guy that was saying stuff to me at the gas station. But I started to just feel unsafe, and a person should feel safe where they are at all times, whether they're at work or they're home. And I didn't really feel safe. So for me to complain about the job wasn't really true because I was worried that he was going to come in and cause trouble. Just being around town, not that there was places around town to go to because this was like middle of nowhere. So eventually I tried to use that excuse of I had to go home and see my family because it was someone's birthday and I promised that I was gonna go home for my family. They were saying that they could like mail me my paycheck. They were not gonna give me my paycheck right then and there. Obviously it had to be processed and everything like a normal paycheck. I just wanted to get out of there. I didn't feel safe. I just wanted to leave. And so that's what I did. So this was like after a month of only being there. And I got my car and I started heading back to Arizona. The problem was I did not have very much money to my name. I was expecting money to come in from my job, but for me to have gas to like just get out of there, to get back home, my car basically ran out of gas. It like broke down and ran out of gas. And then I was stranded, which is a whole nother story. But I just wanted to get home and I was trying to like contact my family. When you're trying to get by when there's no cell phones, I was trying to use pay phones, call my family, tell them to wire me money. I didn't know how wiring money worked, like Western Union. I was just like, I gotta get money. I need to get home. I'm stranded here. So I had to find like where they had to go to like a drugstore to initiate the transfer, and then I had to go to a drugstore in the city where I was at to get the money. And that was a whole long process that was new to me because how often do people transfer money and do Western Union and all that stuff? So kind of crazy. But basically eventually I got back home and continued living in Arizona. I was not living in Casa Grande at that point. I believe I started living in Phoenix, Arizona after that. Even though this story is about moving to Nevada on a whim, I did actually get a job offer to a place in Tucson. I was living in Phoenix. I got offered a job in Tucson, which is like 2 hours from where I was living just with my family. That meant I was gonna have to find a place to live in Tucson. Even though a lot of my videos are about living in my car, I do feel like this can be relatable, though, what it's like to get job offers here and there, and the job offer isn't in the city you live in. It's not always easy to just go find a place to live. We all know that. If you don't have a lot of money to put down, there's like deposits you have to put down. So I was trying to like look for ads for people that were renting out their place to live. I was trying to, of course, meet with people first because if I was going to be someone's roommate, I wanted to get to know them first before we all live in the same house together. Basically, even though I had this job offer lined up, I couldn't find a place to live. And at that point in time, I declined the job because trying to find a place to live was not feasible. So I stayed living in Phoenix and started finding other jobs and was able to get a place of my own because I kind of went through that whole phase of like staying with family, staying with friends, because you really needed to get yourself situated in a job at that point long term before you could start looking for places to live. At least that's how it was for me, because I was still young. You know, that whole time frame between being like age 18 to, I don't know, 23 years old. You know, sometimes people just don't take you serious. Like, they think because you're young, like, you're irresponsible. And, you know, all I was ever trying to do was, like, find a good job and pay my bills and have a place of my own. And you get put into that irresponsible category because you don't have a place of your own, because you can't afford to buy a house, because you are, you know, staying with friends or sleeping on their couch. And, you know, it just takes time to actually get yourself steady in a place where people can start taking you serious. I had crummy jobs that didn't pay well, but I had good jobs too. And even with a good job, you need to have good credit. And what does good credit mean? Good credit means you pay your bills on time. I didn't have credit cards, for one, because banks wouldn't give me a credit card, so I couldn't build credit. Paying bills on time, I mean, not always, because I didn't always have the money to pay them. So, you know, you kind of get that vicious cycle that's just like a part of youth and growing up. And if you don't always have support, by support, I mean, you don't always have your parents paying your bills for you. You don't have that extra, like, step in life where someone can help you out to get where you need to go. You need to help yourself out. And it's rough out there. It's rough. That's part of what I like making these videos about, is why people end up where they're living. Because you see a lot of videos out there of people that have had, like, really great jobs. They were in high management, they worked in IT, and they can't afford a home, and they're living in their car. So what does that tell you? I mean, I just say so much for the American dream, because I am in America. So anyone that's watching this from another country, I mean, sorry, but sometimes this is the American dream, living in your car. Well, I hope we can end this on a high note. So let me give you a nice view of things.
Thank you.
Goodbye.